Frisbee golf?
That's right. It's a 180-degree dog leg.
Well, it looks like it's tough enough just coming right out of that tunnel.
It is.
Staying in the fairway.
It is, and the placement on this shot is very important. Oh, that just nicked the tree. There's the hole, but you have to go around the tree and then back to the hole.
So he's going to have to curve the Frisbee with this throw.
Going to use a roller. That'll pull it in really tightly for him. That's a nice shot. Really nice. Peter's got about the same situation. Uses a sidearm curve.
Oh, he hit the tree.
That's cutting it very closely.
They're both lying too, and they both have straight approach shots, but they're long ones.
Good shot here.
Nice! Give it off!
Off the sidewalk, puts him right in really close.
Nice shot!
Tough for Mark to get inside of that shot.
Here it comes.
Nice shot. Big curve. Very reliable shot.
So they can hole out from there and each get the par fours.
That drop in will give Mark Horn the world golf title over Peter Blur. Good round.
Roger Shepard, 66 in 2022. I was born in Florida and spent third grade through college in Pennsylvania, went to Penn State University, immediately moved out to California for almost 20 years, Vegas for 19, and now residing in San Luis Potosí, Mexico. 1974, I just graduated from high school and was getting ready to go to my freshman year at Penn State at main campus. And with my two friends, Barry and Bruce, we were all going to college. He was already there, and so it was our summer. And we picked up a WHAM-O Frisbee, and in the back instructions, it showed you how to throw skip shots, how to throw forehand, backhand. And so I spent the summer, literally 4 hours a day, trying to learn to throw forehand. And the last day of summer vacation before I went away to college, I figured it out. So I arrived at the Penn State campus able to throw 144-gram freestyle Frisbee with a forehand and backhand and a few other things. And when we got to Penn State main campus, I started doing some freestyle and then found out that they had the start of an ultimate team. So I joined that, and in 1977, so my junior year, we won the East Coast College Ultimate, which at the time was the only ultimate there really was. It was just college teams. So we were the champion of the East Coast, and the Santa Barbara Condors were the champions of the West Coast. And WHAM-O, which was the only manufacturer of discs at the time, was having an annual World Frisbee Championship in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, California. They, at that time, decided to have a unified championship, and they invited us out, flew us, our whole team out there. The difficulty was that we ended our year in May, and we didn't fly out until late July, August, and we were pretty cocky and thought that we would just go out there and not have to practice much, and then Santa Barbara killed us. But it was kind of cool playing in front of 50,000 fans in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena in California. At the end of that tournament, I decided that I wanted to come back again, but they weren't going to invite the ultimate team. So I started to realize that I needed to get better at other sports. So I got really good at freestyle, spent most of my time doing freestyle, got good at disc golf, did some distance, MTA, maximum time aloft, did double disc court, which was also a team event. So I traveled during the summer of '78 to various cities like Rochester, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, and I competed in tournaments and earned points in all those and qualified in 1978 for the World Frisbee Championship in disc golf and in distance and in freestyle, and went out and competed and came in 15th place in freestyle and essentially moved to California after that. So my disc golf career was relatively short. I played for 2 years roughly 78, 79, and the main focus was on ultimate. I opened up the Sedgewood disc golf course in Philadelphia and played the inaugural Philadelphia Open in 1978. Fortunate enough to beat Scott Zimmerman, who was the World Frisbee Championship, by a stroke to come in second, but I lost to Mike Conger, who was the current reigning disc golf world championship at that time. So that was kind of my only real claim to fame, but it was a fun, tight course, and I guess it's still the same now. I haven't been back, but it's been about the same. So I played ultimate in Berkeley, California. I was living in Berkeley. I played with, and we've got a team called the Berkeley Flying Circus, and we were just a misfit group of people from California and a lot of people from the East Coast that had done the same thing I did, which was move out to the West Coast. And so we had a bunch of superstars, and we were like one of the first superstar ultimate teams. But with that comes lack of preparation, lack of practice. So we did okay. We won, I think, 2 state championships, but we never won any international or large one. So by 1981, I had moved south, so I needed to kind of retire from playing all the time, because it's tough when you get a little older and you get a job, and going away on weekends and taking 3 days away every weekend to travel up and down the Pacific Coast. Just that doesn't work when you start to have a pretty important job. So I kind of retired from that. I coached Stanford collegiate and did really well there for a year and a half. And then I just completely got out of Frisbee for 40 years. My only regret is that I didn't stay with it, and that I didn't immediately recognize that disc golf was an organization that was worthy of getting hooked into. If I had gotten a PGA number back in 1977 when I started, it probably would be 3 digits right now. And right now my number is 132623. So I got 6 digits, and I could have had 3. And that would just be more for just like saying, look, I've been around. But the fact that I still have pictures of, playing back then. And when I played in 1978 at the Sedgewood Open in Philadelphia, the first Open that they ever had there, I only had 3 discs, because WHAM-O was the manufacturer, and they all fit inside each other. You had a 180 gram ultimate disc, you had a 144 gram freestyle disc, and a 119 disc, and they all fit inside each other. And that's what I threw. And I threw rollers, and I threw all sorts of crazy shots with those, and I played really well. It'd be interesting to go back with the modern technology right now and see if I could even beat the scores that I used to shoot, because I was really good with those discs. But now I pick them up and I can't even throw an ultimate disc, and I can't even imagine what a 119 would feel like, as you try to throw that, with this big flimsy, plastic. I played golf. I was quite decent at golf. I got to, the lowest I got was a 10 handicap, which is pretty good in the golf world. So I could shoot, a little bit better than bogey golf. And so for 40 years, I didn't do anything in disc golf or ultimate or anything. And then in 2020, late 2019, I all of a sudden saw a disc golf course, and I said, let me go try this. So I went to a store, and of course, like everybody that's just starting out, I think I bought a Sexton Firebird and some other heavy driver, and I assumed, I was really good at ultimate. I should be able to use these things. So I went to a field and started throwing them, and they immediately started dumping like they always do. And I was just like, this is tough. But fortunately, I persevered and I stayed with it. When I got back into disc golf, it was confusing, because I went to Play It Again Sports to look for discs, and I saw all these names like, Mamba, Hatchet, Force, Zeus, and I couldn't figure out what they were. Then I ran into Prodigy discs, and I looked at the way they organized it, and it was P for putter, M for mid-range, D for driver, 1 through 7. 1 was more stable, 7 was less stable. Plastics went from 200 to 750. The lower the plastic, the less durable it was, and sometimes a little less stable. So I gravitated towards that, and then I started paying attention to some of the stars. I really paid attention to Seppo Paiu, and I really enjoyed his form and his ease of throwing. Cale LaVisca, I watched that, and then I watched all the other people, Paul McBeth and all those, but I never was attracted to those discs for the pure simple notion of the fact I didn't want to remember all those names. It was real simple for me and I could explain it to somebody. And then in 2019, I'd already moved out of Vegas. I had decided to find a new home. I'd been 20 years in San Francisco, almost 19 years in Vegas, and it was time for a new location. So I went down to San Luis Potosí just to see what it was like, and immediately fell in love with it because they have the Tangamanga Park, which is the second largest park in all of Latin America. It's 441 hectares, and it's bigger than Central Park, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So even though that city did not match my original criteria of having a disc golf course, it had the potential. So I looked up, I opened up a disc golf magazine, and I looked in the back, and I went down through the ambassadors, and I saw an ambassador, Javier Cruz, for Mexico. I sent him an email, said, hey, this is my history. I've been doing this. I don't know how to play disc golf very well anymore, but I'm interested in seeing what's going on down here. We hooked up, connected, started playing the Tamayo tournament, played the Chapala tournament, played the Cocoyote tournament, and over the last 2 years during COVID, we've been working on building a course in Tangamanga, and fortunately, Raul, you were a key influence because all of a sudden we have thoughts and desires of doing this, getting some approvals, and all of a sudden I get a call one day from him saying Prodigy's going to donate baskets and Luke and Kevin are coming. So all of a sudden things went from like, this is going to happen, but all of a sudden it was like, this is going to happen next month. So we were very fortunate in January of 2022 to have the course installed along with 6 beginner baskets and a massive practice area and hold our first tournament. And so in a little over 2 years, gone from nothing to having a full championship level course and hopefully a second one soon. I'm excited about the future of Mexican disc golf. I'm excited about working with Raul, and I'm working with some young talent that's out there in Mexico, and also some of the Mexicans that are in America. I think Mexico has better resources, and we have much more of a temperate climate to allow us to play 12 months a year. So now my biggest thing is to work with people like you, Raul, to see if we can determine what are the key things, levers that we can push in the next few months that can accelerate things, such as who has land, who has access to land, how do we get courses built? We don't have that in Mexico, unfortunately, and we need more of that. So that's going to be my biggest focus, in addition to taking the existing talent and raising it as fast as we can so that they can compete on this national stage, whether it be in amateurs, and hopefully get some more pros that can travel and start to, make an impact in the open division. I love going to the field. I love practice just as much as playing. In fact, probably even more. I enjoy sitting there and watching 10 throws in a row and just following the path and trying to figure out the ideal way to throw something. I enjoy that, and I relish that. I recognize not everybody does. Some people just want to go play with their buddies, have a beer and just go out and it's a collegial event. That's fabulous. But if you're serious about it, I would recommend starting with putters, start with mid-range, just go to the field, I'd rather you buy 5 putters and just practice putting with 5 identical putters than having a bunch of discs that, all over the place. So, cool. All right, man.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Roger.
That was fun.